Right, okay, can everybody hear me? Ben?
Yep.
Chris?
Yep.
Matthew?
Yep.
Very good. Okay. Today we're going to be talking about opening. So, do you guys know any openings?
Oh, we've dropped out.
Feel free to talk. Queen's Gambit.
Queen's Gambit?
Yeah. I guess.
I favour the Sicilian personally.
Oh, okay. So what do you guys play on move 1 if you're white? Who plays E?
D4.
Okay, put your hand up if you play E4.
A, B, C, D, E, E4.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hello, Bill Chen. Okay, hands up if you play D4. Hands up, play D4.
I can't see many hands going up. Ben said he plays D4.
So it looks like we've got all E4 opening players at the moment. Although more are coming in.
Hello, Mike.
Okay. The thing about opening is that lots of players, they think to themselves, the opening can help them. Well, it can get you into good position, but you still need to keep playing from move 1. So, play the Sicilian, then you're still playing chess, you're not just playing the Sicilian defense opening. Okay? Watch the screen. Okay, does everybody know what they would play next as white?
Knight F3.
Knight F3? Great move. Anything else?
Well, when I was a junior playing in the Australian Junior, someone played F4 on me. King's Gambit, I'd never seen it.
Okay. All right, I'm going to try something different. Seems that everyone's got a good idea of what they might play there. How about in this position, what would you play?
Bishop A6. Bishop A6.
Take the knight? Okay. Anything else? Ever seen this one before, Robert?
No, this would be a very bad player. I'll just play D4 and grab the centre.
Okay, but you wouldn't be following opening theory at the moment, would you, Robert? You'd just be playing general principle chess.
Yes, yes. This is not a proper opening.
Okay. How about this move? Anyone got any ideas what they might do in this position?
Ready to push the pawn and play knight c3.
Okay, knight c3 looks like a good move, supporting your e4 pawn. Pushing the pawn to e5, attacking the knight, also looks like a good plan. Okay, this opening actually does have a name. This one's called Alekhine's defense, named after the world champion Alexander Alekhine. So this one you might have some ideas about if you knew something about the opening.
I don't think many players play this, but Christopher Pasquale does. Mute everyone.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've just turned everybody off because it's getting a little bit noisy. And what I'd like you to do is, if you've seen this move before and you know anything about it, put your hand up. So if you've seen this before, put your hand up. So we've got Matthew. There you go. Okay, so Alekhine's defense is not one of the usual openings that you would play. Now, I'm just going to go back a second. Okay, so we're going to play this move instead. This one's now called the Sicilian defense. Hands up if you've seen this one. One, two. Okay, so we've already got an opening which is more popular. Try this. Hands up if you've seen this one before.
I think everyone's seen this one.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we're already getting to the idea of why certain openings are more important than other openings. Some openings get played more than others. So, when you're learning openings to start with, you should think to yourself, which openings happen the most? They're the ones that you should play and study more than the ones that aren't played. So obviously this one, which is played 75%, would you say? 66%?
In junior tournaments, it's played well over 50%.
Okay, yeah. This is the one that you should really be looking at the most to learn. Once you move into the adult sort of tournaments, then you might be looking at this move, the Sicilian defense, or this one.
Isn't that what Bobby Cheng plays, a world under 12 champion?
Yeah, and also that was the opening that was started by James Morris, the youngest international master in Australia. Although I think he's now changed to playing this move.
I think Bobby plays the French because his coach Daryl Johansson plays the French, and that's probably what he's taught him.
That's right, although actually Daryl's actually started playing C5 as well now.
You want to unmute Ben and tell him he can talk?
Okay, Chris. Chris, you've got a question.
I can't see anything. I can't see the board.
Can't see the board? Okay, does anybody else have that trouble? Just a second, Chris. I'm just going to ask Ben if he could see the board. So, Ben, can you see the chessboard?
Yeah, I can see the chessboard.
Okay. All right, and now we've got Mai with a question. Let's just see if Mai can see the chessboard. Mai, can you see the chess?
I can't see the chessboard either.
You can't see the chessboard?
No.
Okay.
It should have opened up on your computer, shouldn't it? So.
Yeah, if some people can see it, then everyone should be able to see it. Chris and Mai, can you just turn take your hands down for a second. Let's just have a show of hands. Hands up if you can see the chessboard on the computer. So just put your hands up if you can see. Ben can see the chessboard. Matthew can. Okay? Hands up if you can't see the chessboard at the present moment. Okay? Oh, quite a few. Okay, and there are a few people who aren't sure whether they can see it or not, but that's fine. Okay, at the moment we're just talking very basically about some openings. So just put your hands down a second and try and follow. Maybe it would be an idea in the future for people to have a chessboard with them as well. That's what I used to do. I used to have 2 chessboards with me all the time. So, okay, Matthew. Matthew has a question, so let's just find out what he's going to say. Matthew?
What?
You had your hand up, Matthew?
Yep.
What did you want to say?
Oh, nothing.
Okay. All right, well, I've got something here. Hopefully your screen will change now.
I can see a thing saying openings.
Okay. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Okay, to where it says Repertoire 1. Okay? So if you can see that, put your hands up. Ah, good.
If people are having trouble, there should be in the program Go to Meetings. So one of the pull-down menus is Window. So if you have a look at that window, maybe you've got to bring it to the front or zoom it or something like that. If you can't see the
yeah, you see where it says View.
Yeah.
Okay, that should help you out as well.
There's it showing now, so that's good.
Good. Okay. Right. Okay, when you're learning openings, you should learn them in a certain order. Okay? Some openings are more important than others. So here's a typical sort of list of where you should learn the openings in which order. So the Spanish opening, which would be my choice against if my opponent played e5 back at me. So that would be, oops.
So the Spanish opening, that's the Ruy Lopez, isn't it? E4, E5, NF3, and C6, Bishop
That's
E5.
right. For us oldies, that's called the Ruy Lopez, which looks something like this. Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty popular too.
Yeah, that would be the first opening that I would be learning.
Whereas a lot of kids they play Bishop C4 instead of Bishop B5.
Well, certainly that's a good move. And if they wanted to play that, I'd have no problems with that. I've played that myself over the years as well. But stick to one opening and learn that one rather than trying to learn lots and lots of openings. Okay, so that's what you should do to start with. Learn your main opening with E4 and E5. Okay? The next opening you should learn, and probably the one you'll play the most in your lifetime, is your black opening. Whoops. Your black opening against E4. So what do you play, Robert? Would it be a Sicilian?
I played the Sicilian. When I was a junior, I played E5. I did a little bit of the French defence for a while. Then I switched to Sicilian and been pretty well playing that all the time.
Okay. Andreas, you've got a question here. You've got your hand up. So let's see if I can get you up, but you're not in. Andreas, do you want to say something? It's showing waiting to view screen. Okay? All right. Ben Harris, what opening would you play as black if someone did this? e4?
Play E5.
Okay.
Have you always played E5, Ben, or you varied it a bit?
You always play E5. I don't really know anything else to play, and that's usually worked, so...
Okay. Do most people play knight to f3?
I'm sure they do. It's the best move.
Okay, and what would you play to that, Ben?
I'd be aggressive and play knight. No, that'd be me playing. No, not that, sorry. Maybe queen, the queen pawn up one. Can't think of the name, so D5.
That's
No, D4.
Oh,
Six. Yes.
D6.
Yes, sorry.
Okay, that's called Philidor's opening. Okay, and it's actually becoming a little bit more popular now than it was when I was a junior. Some pretty good players have started playing it again now. And at one time it was considered to be not particularly good opening, but as I say, it's now played a little bit more now. Okay. What would white play against you the most in this position?
Ooh, that's a tough one. They might just check me just to be irritating with the bishop.
Bring the bishop out? Bring the bishop out to check? Or perhaps here to attack the weak spot?
Yeah.
If they check you, they're not a very good player because check doesn't gain anything. The opponent just plays C6, attacking the bishop, and then you've wasted a move.
Hmm.
So if they're playing bishop check on you, they're probably...
Okay.
I think the obvious move that people would play here would be D4. Try and grab a bit of the centre and let the bishop out.
And actually, if you know some famous games, perhaps somebody could tell me what famous game this move comes from. In fact, this is probably the most famous game of all time.
Well, it would have to be Paul Morphy versus someone then, wouldn't it?
Probably is a Paul Morphy game, yeah. It's definitely a Paul Morphy game. This is the famous Opera House game. This is the way this started. So if I was learning opening from white or from black, I would almost definitely make sure that I knew this very, very important game, which starts like that. So...
Yeah, well, white's clearly winning his 2 moves ahead in development there, and black hasn't got any pieces out.
That's right. Even if we just knew the basic principles of development, central control and king safety, which are things that we should always be thinking about in the opening, then it's obvious that white's in a very, very good position. Okay. So after these moves, the first moves we have, are we still having problems with the positions on the screen? Perhaps.
Maybe if people can't see the screen, we should say the moves out aloud and you can follow it in your head or on a chessboard. Because we're only looking at the first few moves of the game.
So let's have another show of hands quickly. Hands up if you can see the chessboard on the screen at the moment. Okay, Ben, good. Matthew? Ben and Matthew have been there the whole time. Seems some other people are having some trouble with viewing the screen.
Nice, coming back.
Okay. All right, well, I'm going to go back to my general opening ideas and talk about why you should be learning openings. Now, some people will be saying that openings aren't the most important things to learn. You have to be good at tactics, strategy, and endgames, probably more than openings. But still, it's important to learn openings. Important to learn them to an extent anyway. Okay, Baris, at the moment all I'm doing is reading from a document So don't worry too much. Just listen to what I'm saying and try and understand the things I'm saying. Okay? These are the reasons. Okay, Barris, good. These are the reasons why you should try and learn openings. Okay? All opening positions have traps, various tactics that people have done before. So it's a good idea to try and learn these traps so we can see them and do them in similar sorts of positions. Also, it's a good idea to know where a good places to put your pieces. Some players, I know that Roberts, one of Robert's favourite players is Karpov, seems to have the ability to put his pieces just on the right squares without even thinking too much about where those right squares are. He just has a feeling that the pieces go onto the right squares, or the right squares for the pieces. So this is something that we can also develop by learning the openings we're playing. And Robert, I'm sure you'd agree, Karpov wasn't a particular opening specialist.
Yeah. Well, I think when you're a junior, openings are very complicated and there's lots of moves to learn if you want to learn them properly, but it's more important to learn the basic principles. I'm sure the coaches and David Cordova keeps saying, control the centre, develop your pieces, castle your king, that sort of thing. So if you just obey the basic principles, then you can get by. Or the other option is a lot of openings are just really the same basic setup. You can have like a King's Indian attack or a King's Indian defence or another opening called a collie system. And you can just learn that first half a dozen moves and play that pretty well no matter what your opponent plays, and you get a reasonable position.
Yeah, that's exactly right. By looking at certain openings that you play again and again and again, you just get a good feeling for where pieces should go, rather than learning and trying to remember moves, because the problem is that when you try to remember the moves of a certain opening, when someone does something different, well, that can really throw you. And if you don't remember, sometimes you can take a long time, and if you've only got 15 minutes to make all your moves, that long time can really put you behind on the clock, which is a real problem in that sort of game. Okay, some openings have specific sorts of ideas. So I'm going to go back to the screen now, the chess screen. If I was to play after e4, e5, instead of the usual knight f3, if I was to play the King's Gambit with f4, then my basic idea would be to attack the f7 square.
Yeah, well, that's the weakest square on the board, so a lot of openings are directed against that.
That's right. The King's Gambit has an idea of moving the bishop to c4, moving the knight first to f3, and then possibly to g5, and then castling so that the rook that's on f1 also will hopefully be attacking f7 after an exchange of pawns in the center of the board. So here's one specific idea that works definitely with this opening, although it might not work with all openings. And this is why when you learn certain openings, you'll learn the specific ideas behind those specific openings.
Yeah, the King's Gambit's a very attacking opening, and if you haven't played against it before, as was my case, as I said in the Australian Junior when someone played on me for the first time, it's very easy to lose horribly and not know what a good defence is. So one of my students tried the King's Gambit for a while, because all the kids play the Ruy Lopez or the Igor Capiano with knight f3. So if you play a different opening, you're going to catch them by surprise.
That's right. Sometimes it's good to learn more than one opening to play in certain positions, like vary with the Ruy Lopez or King's Gambit, just so that you get to try and play lots of different types of positions, so you don't get a little bit bored and a little bit stale. Also, so that your opponents can't prepare for you.
I know when Ian Rogers was a junior, and I played him quite a bit, he was a shocker to try and prepare for, because he had 5 or 6 different openings he could play, and you'd never know which one he was going to choose on the day, so you couldn't really prepare much for him at all.
Exactly. And the other thing is, I've played Guy West, International Master Guy West, now 8 times in 5 years. And the opening's been different every time. So that's a real problem.
Yeah, well, I suppose there's 2 schools of thought. There's the school of thought that says you should change a lot and then your opponent can't prepare for you. Or the other school of thought is you play the one opening all the time, and even though your opponents know you're going to play it, you've played it so often, you know it really, really well, and perhaps they might even be scared to go into it against you because you know the ideas behind it. Different concepts of what you should do in the opening.
Yeah, I think I'm more of the play the same opening lots and lots. I change my openings every 5 years maybe or something. Okay, we're very close to finishing this session. Oh no, we're not. We're only halfway through. Sorry.
We're only halfway through.
Good. Because I've got a lot to say yet. Good. How can we learn openings? Well, that's a very, very good point. That's the next sort of thing. The first thing we should do is look at some games of some top players. Certain players will appeal to you and certain players won't. For instance, of the top players in the world at the present moment, because I'm an attacking player, I really like the games of Topalov and Anand. Those games really excite me. Someone like Kramnik, I understand, but his games don't excite me so much because he's more of a positional and defensive player. So I tend to look at the openings and games of Topalov or Anand.
Yeah, well, I'm a bit the same. When I was playing, Karpov was the best player and he was my hero, and he had sort of solid positional openings. So I certainly played through a lot of his games and copied some of his openings because we had a similar sort of style. So I think it's good to choose someone you like and copy them.
Okay, then you can choose openings that suit your style. So if you're an attacking player, you might choose the Sicilian. If you're a solid player, then perhaps you might choose an opening like the Caro-Kann. Okay? Also, when you start your openings, you might play E4 on move 1 and choose very solid lines to play. Karpov, for instance, played E4 when he started playing and played the openings very, very solidly. Kasparov, who was a very attacking player, well, he played E4 later on in his life. He started off by being a D4 player, but he did change to E4, but played completely different systems to Karpov.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was looking the other day at Bobby Fischer's biography and some of his games, and he played something like 518 games as white using E4. So he pretty well match of his life against Spassky on games, I think it was 4 and 6. He played the English opening, which he'd only ever played 4 or 5 times before in his whole life. So poor old Spassky, with all his trainers, he'd been preparing like crazy for E4, and he got something different in the actual match.
That's right, and also from being a C5 player, he played Alekhine's once in that match, didn't he? As well, I think, as black.
I think so.
So, changing your openings around, especially at special times like that, can be very, very important. Okay. So, let's just say that you've chosen your openings, you've chosen your players to follow, you've got some ideas of where you can get some opening stuff. I've included a website here where you can go and look at openings. It's called www.eudesign.com ChessOps, and there you can go through lots of openings and learn the names of lots of openings and see how they sort of work out. Then the next thing is to develop what's called a repertoire. Now this takes a long, long, long time. You can't do it overnight. You can't all of a sudden learn all your openings in one go. As I've been saying, you have to learn your openings in an order, and the order would be learning the openings that they're most likely to come up. Okay, so there are 2 basic repertoires that I have put on the screen. At the present moment, there's a repertoire that's based on playing 1 E4 as your first move, which most of you seem to do. Let's just have a show of hands again. Now we have a few more people. Hands up if you play 1 E4. And if you can see my chessboard, that's the move I'm talking about. 1 E4. Hands up if you play this move. Okay. Ben, Matthew, Chris, Bill, I know Alex does as well. Okay? Oh, you all do. That's good. I don't even have to look at the second repertoire.
Okay.
Okay? So, all of you should, to start with, be learning the E4, E5 opening. Then you should look at an opening that suits your style against E4. So you're positional and you play the Sicilian. Robert, I'm an attacking player and I play the Sicilian. So we're both choosing slightly different variations of the Sicilian.
I think you've also got to bear in mind who you're playing. So, for instance, if you're playing a really strong player and you're probably going to lose, you might want to play a drawish opening where you can swap off lots of pieces and perhaps have a better chance of getting a draw. So you can choose your opening for your opponent as well.
Yep. After you've chosen and started to learn your black opening versus E4, then have a look at some of the other E4, E5 openings that there are. So, after E4 and E5, if you play knight F3, which is pretty much the best move, besides moving your knight to C6, there are a number of other moves, as we've already seen. Matthew moves his pawn down 1 square. Actually, that's just...
Was it Matthew or Ben?
Oh, I don't know, actually, was it? Oh, yeah, it was Ben.
Decent.
Yeah, that's right. Let's just have a look at what Chris has got to say. Hello, Chris.
Oh, I just forgot to put my hand up.
You forgot to put your hand... I can see your hand now. Okay. Okay. And this...
We're going to play knight F6, are we? The Petrov defense.
Well, this is a move that's quite annoying that a lot of the top players are playing at the present moment, including Anand has started playing this.
This has a reputation of being a very drawish opening because you're playing the same moves and swapping off, and unless times have changed perhaps.
Yeah, it is a pretty drawish opening still, but the top players are playing it quite a lot at the present moment.
Yeah. So if you were playing a good player as white, this would probably be a good choice of an opening for black.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Especially if you knew it quite well. So, if you were white, this move is certainly something that I would be trying to work out what I would be doing with white. So, there are a number of different moves you can play. You can take the pawn. You can push your pawn to D4. The move I play at the present moment, although I might change, I bring my knight out to C3 to defend my E4 pawn. But this is the next thing you really have to learn, all these other E4, E5 openings. And once you've got all those, you can start looking at some of the other responses to E4. So, the order that I would choose, because these are the ones that mostly come up, are the French. As Robert said, for those of you who arrived late, we have some very good players in this country who play the French opening. It's quite popular in Australia, isn't it? As you say, possibly because Daryl Johansson played the French a lot, so maybe that inspired a lot of people. Then the Sicilian, which is popular, certainly in adult chess, it's very, very popular.
I like the Sicilian because it leads to unbalanced positions. Because E4, E5 is just symmetrical, and you put out your knights and it's sort of fairly boring. But E4, C5, black's going to end up with an open C file probably, and white ends up with an open D file. So if you're playing someone and you want to win,
certainly, that's the reason I play it as well. I like to try and play for a win rather than for a draw. So that's why I play the Sicilian. I do sometimes play E5, and like you, I've sometimes played E6, but the Sicilian is the one that I will be choosing the most at the moment. Okay, after that, you have to learn, and this is probably my biggest weakness, my opening against D4. Because I'm an E4 player, I've looked mostly at E4 openings. But at some stage, you have to learn what to do against all the other openings. So white can play this move, or this move.
That's the English opening, the one I said Bobby Fischer played only 7 times in his whole life.
That's right. He can set up a defense on this side, looking to move this pawn up to here. Okay? And there are a number of other openings that he can play.
Most of the other openings are silly, though.
Well, they still have to be learned at some stage.
So like B4 or Knight C3 or some unusual move on move 1.
Yeah, that's right. D4 is the main one, and that's the one that you have to put a lot of emphasis into learning. Quite a few players play that in this country. And where I come from in England, it's less popular than E4, but probably in this country there's about a 50-50 split at the adult level, I've found. So it's quite important to learn what you're going to play against this. And there are even more openings against D4 than there are against E4.
Yes, I know in my case I was lazy and I tried to play a system against D4 called the Old Indian, where you put your knight on F6, you put your pawn on D6, put your other knight on D7, and then you play E5. So you can do that pretty well against anything. Move your bishop out to E7 if you've got a chance and just castle, and it's really nice and solid and you don't have to think much.
Now this is really a little bit spooky based on what we were talking about earlier.
And tell me you play it too.
No, but actually this looks very much like the Philidor. If White had played E4, it looks exactly the same setup as...
Yes, you can probably transpose into the Philidor, but most D4 players, they don't want to play E4, so they'll put a pawn on C4 and D4 instead and have that sort of a setup.
Okay. Yep. What I try to do is I try to play a different system to that. My opening against this is just very simply to play D5. And generally, if my opponent plays C4, I'm very, very greedy.
Don't tell me you take it.
Yeah, I take it generally speaking.
Oh, you are greedy.
Okay. But sometimes I wait a little bit and play this move first, and then I still want to try and take it later. To me, it looks like a free pawn.
The only trouble with that opening is if White wants to draw because you're the stronger player, he can just swap pawns and then it's symmetrical and you've only got one open file, the C file, so he's going to have a good chance of getting a draw against you.
Yes, I know.
I guess that's a slight risk you run if you're the higher rated player.
Yeah, that's right. So learning your D4 openings can be a bit difficult if you're an E4 player. Then again, if you're a D4 player, learning what to play against E4 can be quite difficult because those are the openings you won't look at very much. Okay, once you've learned your openings against D4, then we get to systems that are played a little bit less. So, learning the Caro-Kann, which is very popular amongst the top girl players in Australia. The Hertz and modern systems, which are fianchetto systems. The black openings against all the other white moves that he can play, and then some other systems as well. So that's the order that you should really learn them in. And if you're wondering how long it should take you to learn all these things, well, I'm sorry to say that the Russian trainers say that learning a good opening repertoire should take 5 years. So it's not an easy thing. Yeah. It is a lot of hard work, but you don't have to spend like hours and hours every day learning your openings. In fact, you certainly shouldn't spend hours and hours every day. We're just talking about a little bit every day. Every week. Okay?
If I was a junior, I'd be spending pretty well 80% of my time learning tactics, because all the games of kids are decided by blunders, and if I'm really good tactically, if I'm someone like a Sam Chow, who just mops you up with these really brilliant tactics, young and just getting the basics for the openings.
Oh, definitely. At the very top of this sheet, which will be on the Chess Kids website very, very soon, if not already, it says that studying openings should take about 25% of a player's study. So less for newer players and possibly a little bit more for more experienced players. So 25%, a quarter of your time. If you're a newer player, then maybe only 10% of your time to learning openings. We haven't got that many completely new players here.
No.
So about 20 or 25% of your time to learning openings.
All this changes around if you're a really good player and you're about to play in a big tournament, then most of your preparation would be the openings before the tournament. You'd be looking at your opponent's openings and getting your repertoire all fine-tuned. It's a bit late then to sort of do basic tactical stuff on openings, but not so much perhaps when they're young.
That's right. Okay, well, I've got two ways that you can start learning openings. Okay, things that can help you to learn openings. Number one is something that's called an openings tree. And the strong players, they develop these things, and the tree gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So if I just, let's see, I'll just put this here and I'll just move. There. Oops. You can see, oops. Let's see if I can just move this out of the way a little bit. Just move it down there. Right.
I can see it fine.
Oh, good. Okay. Here, I've got Opening Tree by Carl Gorka, and it's got my moves. So I play E4 on move number 1. I've got all the other moves, D4, C4, Knight to F3. Okay, and then I've got all the openings that I could face. E5, E6, C5, C6, D6, G6, Knight F6, and even the very, very bad knight.
Surely you don't have a repertoire against that. No one would play that in a proper tournament.
No, I've never actually faced it. But you see, as I learn more and more about the openings, my tree will get bigger. So, for instance, I know that against the French, I always push my pawn to here. And I expect my opponent to push his pawn to attack the center.
I'll do something a little bit different, because like, say you're playing Bobby Ching, who plays the French all the time and knows it really well. So you play E4, he plays E6, so you're stuck in the French defense. So my idea would be, I don't want to go into his sort of pet opening, so I play to D3, which is my pet where I know what's happening, and he's probably less experienced in that.
Okay, well, Rob, if you ever do play against Robert and you want to play the French, you now know what he plays.
But of course, I might change on the spur of the moment.
Yeah, of course, and I might not play D4 every game I play either.
Yeah.
But the point is, you need to develop an opening tree, which may just start with E4 and E5, but it will grow. The tree will grow to include other things. It will include all the other openings as you learn them, and even after E5, your next move that you play every time, so if you play Knight to F3, that will be part of your openings tree. Your opening tree will expand and it will get bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay, besides opening trees, the thing you have to do is find games that have been analyzed or annotated, which means they've been taken to bits by the top players themselves. Having a number of Grandmaster games is very, very, very important. Grandmasters, they can tell you exactly what ideas you should be thinking or what ideas they were thinking in certain openings. This is what we were saying about following certain players. So who was your hero when you...
Karpov?
Okay, mine was another world champion called Tao. Okay.
Well, they've both got plenty of annotated games out there in books and on the internet.
Yep, so you can look at books. You can go to the Chess Kids site and look at some of the books. Or you could possibly try and find some games online at a place called chessgames.com. Okay?
Another thing that's important that we should probably mention is you should have your opening sort of worked out what you play going down your tree against each opening. So you know what your tournament game between two Grandmasters. Very often they'll make the first 10 or 15 moves in a few seconds. They won't think at all because they've already worked it out beforehand. Whereas against this, I can remember once in an Australian Championship, Max Fuller was famous because his opponent played 1e4 and he sat there for half an hour before making his move. It's just a total waste of time. So you should have your moves worked out against each opening and just sort of play them out quickly so you've got all your time to spend on the rest of the game.
Well, that's quite right. But some openings you'll know better than others. So some you'll be able to play to maybe move 10 or 15, and some you'll only know the first 5 or 6 moves.
Yes, if your opponent brings a surprise move, obviously you've got to sit down and work out what's happening.
That's right. And for some of you guys, if someone plays a completely new move, you might be on your own on move 1 or 2 even, especially if they play knight a6. No, that's right.
I just sit there and think my opponent's not very strong, I'll move quickly and win quickly.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so when you find your annotated games or your analyzed games, look through these games because they will be your main source of information about the openings you play. As I say, I had a load of games by Tao. I had a book that was about his best games when I was younger. And so I learned lots of Sicilian openings, which he was very, very good at from both black and white, which is probably why it's my favorite opening now. And I learned lots and lots about it from a world champion, and you can't get much better than that.
That's for sure. The other important thing to mention that you mentioned before on the King's Gambit opening, it's important not just to learn the moves, but you need to understand. In the King's Gambit one that Carl showed you, the idea was to attack that weak f7 square. So once you understand the ideas, even if a move comes up that's slightly different to what you're expecting, you still know what you're meant to be doing.
That's right. You need ideas, some traps to avoid, and perhaps 1 or 2 to start with, specific moves that might throw your opponent. So the King's Gambit, f4, well, if someone hasn't seen it, it's going to be a huge shock, and someone's really not going to know what to do against it.
Yeah, surprise moves are great. I can remember one Australian Championship I was playing Doug Hamilton, and we always used to play the same opening. I'd play the Pelican variation of the Sicilian defence, so we'd go to about move 10 or 11 before we'd have to start thinking. But I'd found this new move in a Canadian magazine, and it was sort of 11, rook g, queen h5, and then I sprung my surprise move on him, rook g8, and he thought for half an hour, because he was in shock and it wasn't meant to be the main move. What does he do? He doesn't know. And he just moved his queen back again. So he'd given me 2 free moves and half an hour on the clock, just because I played the surprise move on him.
Yeah, well, with time chess, that's the beauty of actually doing some opening study, because you can spend as much time as you want at home learning some opening ideas, but then when you get to play on the board, you can play them almost instantly, some of those moves. Although I would never play a move completely instantly, because you'll be giving your opponent a bit of an idea as that you know exactly what's going on. Okay, I think what Robert's saying is what I've written down on the screen, which is always remember the basics about each opening. So there are things that you should be thinking about, not just in openings, but also throughout the whole game. So, our 3 golden rules of the opening, center, development, and king safety, these things happen in all parts of the game. So when you're looking at openings, you should be thinking about those 3 things. Perhaps, as we get to the middle game, these things change a little bit and are called, the center sort of more becomes pawn structure, which is what David did a lesson on last Monday. Instead of development, we talk about piece activity, but all you're doing really is developing and developing and developing, and your pieces might move to one square, but you might move them to a different square later.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of junior games where they make a common mistake as well. They just swap pieces for the sake of swapping. So very often the junior will move the bishop out to g4, say, pinning a knight on f3, and next move with the developing move like the queen or something. So black spent 2 moves moving the bishop out, taking the knight, just doing an even exchange, bishop for knight. He hasn't gained anything. In fact, he just lost time. So we want to be certain that the moves we make, there's a good reason for doing something like swapping piece for piece. You don't just do it because you can.
No, that's right. And in fact, I think there's a future lesson for you there, a lesson on exchanges, because it's something that people just think, they don't really think about. They just do it for the sake of it, really, which is a little bit disturbing sometimes.
Yeah.
So all these things that you think of as middle game strategies, they're really not just middle game strategies, they're opening strategies and even end game strategies as well. So think about from move 1, even though you play e4 and you do it every time, and your opponents will mostly play e5, and then your next move might be knight f3 every game you play, you should already be thinking, before you've even made your first move, what you're going to be doing and why you're going to be doing it. Keep those things in mind, because a lot of people tend to forget. So when someone comes up with a new move, they're not thinking logically. All they're thinking is, that's not the move that I was expecting. And then instead of doing a good move, they'll make any move.
Well, a rule of thumb I have is when you're stuck where you're trying to decide between moves, I say to myself, where do I want my pieces? So if, for instance, I think it's my turn to develop my king's bishop, I can say to myself, do I want to put it on e2 or c4 or d3 or maybe even b5? And I'd have to say, which is the best square? And if I put it on b5, there, and the realization that he's probably going to attack it with his pawn on a6, and then I will have to exchange or go backwards. So I wouldn't put it there unless I was certain that the exchange was good for me, or I can move it backwards to keep it. I put it instead, say, on c4 instead of b5. But if you just say, where do I want my pieces, so that you're not moving it around all the time, you put it straight away on the best square.
Spoken just like Karpov. Yes, exactly. Okay, I've got one last thing, because we've only got about 5 minutes left to go now. So one last thing that I'd like you all to start doing. Doesn't matter who is around. So how many people have we got? We've got 10.
Questions? Let them ask a question or something?
Yep. Well, actually, yeah, we might as well do that now. So let's, yeah, if you've got any questions about what we are. Yes, I can see you're here, Alex. Well done.
Have you unmuted them?
No, we'll do a hands up. Otherwise, everyone will be shouting questions all at the same time, I reckon. So if anyone's got any questions about openings, then you can put your hand up and ask us, and we'll see what's going on. See if we can answer your questions. So anyone got any questions? Alex Rigby's got a question. There you go. Excellent. Hold on, Alex. Yep.
What do you think what is your best opening that you like the most?
Are you talking to me or are you talking to Robert? Or should we both?
You.
Me. Okay, well, my favourite opening is probably the Sicilian. There are certain bits of the Sicilian that I know quite well, so I play it quite well from White's point of view. From Black, there are only a couple of variations that I know well, so the one that Robert plays, which is called the Sveshnikov variation. I don't really know anything about that, to be honest.
Oh, I'm playing that against you next time we play then. That's good. I'll write that down.
So that's probably not going to be one of my favourites, but there are some other variations that I know quite well. So that's the opening that I like. It leads to very attacking chess. I like to castle on the queen side, and my opponent usually castles on the king side, and it leads to a very nice attacking game. That's generally the way I like to play. Okay, should we go to Ben? Thanks very much, Alex. Okay, Ben?
What do you do against e4, e5, queen h5?
Oh, well, actually, the American champion, Nakamura, started playing this move a couple of years ago at the very, very top level. And he played it against a Ukrainian guy called Volotakin in a very, very big tournament. And he lost in about 15 moves.
And deservedly so, because it's a stupid move.
Yeah, when you bring your queen out very, very early, queen is initially, if you can see the screen, let's put it up, if you bring your queen out initially, it's attacking the pawn on e5. So that's what you have to do. You have to defend your pawn on e5. So the most natural thing is to bring your knight out to c6, which defends the e5 pawn. And I'm presuming then White's next move is going to be four-move checkmate with bishop c4.
Yep. Hope his opponent's asleep.
And Nakamura, who at the present moment has a rating of over 2,700, and I think has just jumped into the top 20 in the world, was playing exactly this about 18 months ago or 2 years ago. Until he, as I say, he got beaten very, very badly. There are lots and lots of good moves for black in this position.
I just played g6 and attacked the queen, I think.
g6 is a nice move. In junior tournaments, I actually recommend queen to f6.
That wouldn't be bad too.
Defends this square. It also attacks my opponent's weak spot, which they often...
And do the same thing to him that he's trying to do to you.
Yeah. But almost definitely the best move is to play g6 in this position. Queen then has to go back. And I find that some players play this sneaky move.
Yep, trying the same thing again.
Yep, so it's aiming again at f7. But now you can just continue your development by just bringing your knight out and blocking the queen. Bring your knight out to f6.
You could even put your queen out, so if he swaps queen for queen, you can recapture with the knight, and that's a developing move. And now you're also threatening knight d4 to chase his queen away. That would be reasonable as well.
Okay, so you've seen that your opponent has some threat. Queen h5 initially threatens e5, but he's really aiming at the weak spot f7, so you just have to deal with that. Okay, does that answer your question, Ben?
Yeah, thanks. I've been playing against you a couple of times and I was a bit confused.
Okay. Bringing the queen out early like that's not really a good idea. Okay, because it gets chased away and black will gain time to develop his pieces by attacking the queen. But a lot of people do play it. Thanks very much, Ben.
Can I use an analogy with warfare? Bringing the queen out early like that would be like Napoleon facing Wellington at Waterloo, and to start the battle, Napoleon hops on his horse and charges all the British infantry himself, alone, the most powerful piece on the whole board, but he's got no backup. It'd just be suicide. And it's the same in chess. You shouldn't bring your queen out early because it's so powerful it just gets chased away by all the little pieces and pawns, and you waste time moving it everywhere, or you might end up losing it.
Okay, now I've got a little bit of homework for everybody. So this is the bit where you're all grown. Okay, the opening. What you should do. This will all be on the Chess Kids website. The homework involves starting an openings tree. So for most of you, that will involve, at some stage, writing down, either on paper or on your computer, the moves e4 and e5, because that's what you know. Your tree will get bigger and bigger and bigger as you add more and more openings to it, until you get to a stage where you're like, well, actually, I was very, very lucky before I left England to see the openings tree of a grandmaster. And it went on for pages and pages and pages and pages because he had lots and lots of variations. Okay, more than I could possibly remember. But that's what everybody will be getting to at some stage. I've given you a website to go to, which is chessgames.com, www.chessgames.com. This is a site online where there are lots and lots and lots of games, and you can have a look at one or two and see if any of those games appeal to you in certain openings. And then the websites that were given to you by David on Monday, places to go and play chess, try to go on these sites and play your main opening. So give your opening a try on one of the main websites. Okay? Right, well, I think that's pretty much time to wrap up.
So the next one is with me on Monday at 7 o'clock, I think.
Yep. So, thank you all very much. Thanks for the questions. And hopefully, we'll see you all. Let's have a look. We've still got 10 of you. Hopefully, we'll see you all, plus a few more, on Monday at 7 o'clock.
All right, look forward to it. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Robert.
Bye, everyone. Have you shut it down or something?